Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And in this lesson, I wanted to deal with this article concerning, I guess, I would refer to it as a sensitive topic, as we have had to deal with over the past few years. Anything dealing around this kind of subject, you gotta be careful how you word things and stuff, because if not, they're just gonna take your video down and say that it's violating guidelines. Slack you. So what I'll try to do is just I'll try to keep it high level, but still get the point across here. Now, this article is from Zero Hedge, and it's dealing with the H1 and H5N1 or something like that, but pretty much the bird flu. Now, for a couple of years now, this individual, and even recently, I think he came out and spoke again about it. And I believe this is his name. I think his name is Robert Redfield, if I'm not mistaken. It might be something else, but I believe he is the ex-director or head of the CD, the C people. But pretty much he warned, either a year or two ago about the same, bird flu. Okay. Recently he came out and warned again as to how he believes that if this does, because right now we're seeing it affect animals, cattle, obviously birds, chickens, stuff like that. But, he's saying that if this jumps to humans, then this could be the cause of the great demic. And I mean, if you look at things scaling proportionally, at least with the C, the C thing, and how pretty much the world itself was put to a standstill. But if you consider what the mortality rate of, the C was versus what the mortality rate of something that's actually, like a more lethal pathogen. If like maybe another demic was to happen with a very lethal pathogen, it would be quite a different experience, right? Because people were already afraid as it was with the first one, but to have something that is to the point where you're not being told, you're not just being given numbers. Oh, these are the daily numbers and stuff, but you're actually witnessing these things. Like eyewitnesses, you're seeing, you're seeing footage of actual high death counts. That would be a completely different experience, which a lot of people haven't had to go through that. Okay. The main fear in the previous situation was really the hysteria, the narrative. But to actually see and witness or live through and experience a situation where people are actually dying by the masses, and nobody has to tell you that, you can see it for yourself, I think that will create a very chaotic situation. But it's all prophesied to happen anyway. So let me read this. The headline says FDA preparing for possible now, I wonder if I should already start coming up with code names now, because typically how this thing goes is the reason a lot of our channels got taken down and a lot of our videos got strikes was really because of YouTube retroactively giving us strikes for things. Because at the time when we were talking about it, it was normal until they introduced new policies and then went back and said, look at all these videos you have violating our policies. Now you're getting a strike for that. And I have a feeling that they're going to do the same thing if this topic here, the BF or the bird, becomes something along those lines. So maybe we'll just call it the bird, or some whatever comes to mind here. But at least we know what we're talking about here. So the FDA prepared FDA preparing for possible bird spread, or BF spread among humans. Commissioner, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is preparing for a scenario in which the highly pathogenic avian influenza starts spreading among humans, the agency's commissioner said on May 8th. And here's the problem with that. Right now, they're saying that the chances of that really becoming a main thing is low. And so we might just be protected by the species barrier, which is that this is really only seen in certain species and it's not hasn't transmitted to humans. But also the one thing to factor in is mutations. Today, they may tell you that it has a mortality rate of 25%, for example. But if it mutates to where it now starts to affect humans, who's to say that that mutation doesn't also affect the mortality rate? Maybe it becomes by mutating to a version that can actually affect humans. Maybe it becomes more lethal at the same token. Anyway, it says this pathogen, like all pathogens, is mutating. We need to continue to prepare for the possibility that it might jump to humans. Dr. Robert Khalif, the commissioner, told senators during a hearing in Washington. Now, I believe there's something. Let me see if I type it in here. There's something will come up here. I think it's the One Accord Treaty. Let's see what comes up. Is it this one? No, it's not the One Accord. There was something. It's called something else, but it's going to grant the I think it's the WHO a whole lot of power and authority and jurisdiction over whatever they deem to be a potential demic. And in that case, they become like the main sole authorities. Of course, you can look into this and get more details, but just on a rough level, they can sort of deem what is classified as what and what measures need to be taken. So it's pretty much like step out of the way and follow what we have to say. So we become that authority. So let's read a little bit more here. The pathogen, also known as the BF or H5N1, has recently started spreading among cattle and other species. One person in Texas has had a confirmed case this year. So far, genetic sequencing and other data indicate that the pathogen possesses little risk to people, and there are no signs that the BF is transmitting from person to person, according to U.S. officials. But they are working on getting treatments, tests, and Vs ready in case that changes. And that's the thing. When you start to talk about situations like this, you're dealing with live data. Live data is, it's one thing today, and next week is another thing. The next month is another thing. So today you may hear good news. Next week you may hear bad news. The week after that you may hear good news. The week after that you may hear even worse news. And it gives you from the, depending on which side you're on, from the angle of somebody who may, just put this out there, may be trying to say use this and add some propaganda to it and all of that. From that angle, you do have a benefit because you can justify your actions based on live data and say, look, based on what we're seeing right now, we have to do X, Y, and Z. But that could change tomorrow. That could change next week. So as it changes, we got to adjust our measures accordingly. If you go with a narrative like that, you it's like having unlimited bounds. Because if somebody says, hey, you made the wrong call, you can say, well, I made a call based on what we were seeing then. That has changed now. But at the time, this is what we saw. So this is what we acted on. If we waited any longer, we might have been in a worse situation. So you get to cover your ass. But Let's keep reading here. We've been busy getting prepared for if the pathogen does mutate in a way that jumps into humans on a larger level. Dr. Khalif told the Senate Appropriations Committee Agriculture Appropriations Subcommittee, which she says here the real worry is that it will jump to the human lungs, where, when that has happened in other parts of the world for brief outbreaks, the mortality rates have been 25%, which is pretty high, at least in comparison to the one that shut down the world, right? If that, with its mortality rate, which is much lower than 25%, shut down the world, what do you think happens when you see something with 25%? And this is what they're saying is from previous instances. Okay, so we could very well be getting ready to see something that causes a lot of chaos, a lot of fear. Now, I want to get this precept here. This is Jeremiah 23:20, because at the end of the day, if this does turn out to be something, and it's much worse than what people have seen before, it's all part of prophecy, right? It's all part of the doings of the Lord. And yeah, some people might say, oh, we're not going to fall for it again. We fell for it the first time, but F that. And they might say, okay, we'll see what happens. This time, we're not going to go with a propaganda card, like 100% propaganda, zero reality. This time, we'll let you see it for yourself. So the reason this is so bad is because you're not dealing with a case where somebody is like, you know what? I don't want to contract this thing, but even if I do, it's not the end of the world. I can compare it to just like a cold, or I can just compare it to this, and I can just take this and I'll be fine. Right. So if somebody has the mindset of like, hey, I don't believe what they're saying on the TV, so I can just do this, do that, and I'll be good. It's not the biggest deal in the world. I'm fine. I had it and I recovered, so I was good. That's one thing. That's like I would really not want to get this. I don't want to lose my sense of taste and sense of smell. I don't want to have to go through that stuff. But I'm not fearing for my life if I just so happen to get it. Okay. Now, when you are dealing with a situation where it's like, there's a very real risk that I will die if I get this, you have a completely different reaction from people. Okay, you have a completely different reaction from people. Like, people looked at you funny a couple of years ago if you weren't wearing a mask. People looked at you like, they looked at you like you were the actual thing. And mind you, this thing we're talking about did not have a high mortality rate like it did, like these other things do. So how do you think people are going to react? Even just suspecting that they may have it. Because once fear sets in, reasoning disappears. And people start bugging out. And they just start thinking, I'm done. I'm going to die. It's over. I'm done. So it'll be very, very crazy for people to experience a situation where it's like real. It's real. Like maybe it has like certain physical symptoms that you can see and they don't look good at all. And there's a whole lot of people that don't make it, people that get it and don't make it. And now it's not like, oh, I knew like one or two people that got it and, they didn't make it. This is like, there's a whole lot of people that I knew that got it and didn't make it. Imagine the kind of scenario that would be in. Now that is actually going to cause real fear and terror. Now, this is the book of Jeremiah 23:20. The anger of the Lord Yahweh shall not return until he have executed, until he have performed the thoughts of his heart. In the latter days ye shall consider it perfectly. And that's the thing. A lot of people don't consider it. They don't consider the judgment of the Lord. They don't consider the anger of the Lord. And they don't consider the things that the Lord, the actions or the steps that he will take to appease that wrath or anger. So when the Lord does something like bring a certain situation, a certain thing that starts to wipe people off the face of the earth, they're going to consider it perfectly, because that is going to be the number one thing that everybody's going to be considering. Everything else is going to go out the window when you're faced with situations like this. And that's why that, or at least I should say, that's when it becomes easier to be manipulated, because you're that afraid. You're like, yo, you would rather trust the words of someone that seems like an authority than your own, thoughts, because of how fearful you are. And like, hypothetically, say this thing does become a major situation, but this time is like, we're talking about real life shit. Like, we're not talking about it's only existing when you turn on the TV kind of joint. We're talking about you see this, you're experiencing this. Like, you are hoping that you do not become a victim to this, because everybody you've seen that became victim to this didn't make it. In situations like that, all that talk that people have goes away. You will see people who have stood boldly, swore up and down that they don't follow the narrative of Esau, and they're not with that shit. Because of how afraid and terrified they would be, guess what? The same people that they admit lied to them, they will go right back and listen to whatever it is they have to say. And let it come down to faith and try to talk to somebody about faith in that day. Their fear for what they're seeing and experiencing in real time will push them far away from they're not going to rely on their faith. Unless you're of the elect, there's going to be a lot of people that you're going to see that they're not going to rely on their faith. Their faith is only going to take them so much. But what happens is, when your faith is not strong enough, then that fear gets to basically override or overrun that faith. Your faith is not strong enough to contend with the fear of experiencing a situation like this, especially if this is the first time you're experiencing something like this. So that's why ultimately it's very important to not just have faith, but to grow your faith, to solidify it. Because if at some point the fear of whatever it is that is happening becomes too much, and you don't have enough faith to where you're relying on your faith, and instead you let that fear take over, remember, as I think it says in the Apocrypha in the Book of Wisdom of Solomon, that fear betrays the succoth or sakoth, or however you pronounce that is offered by reasoning. You see? And that is going to cause people to make irrational decisions that will end them up in even worse situations. But anyway, I just wanted to speak on that very briefly. I think this is something that we should definitely keep our eye on and just watch how it goes, because the Lord did say, right in Matthew 24, pestilences, not just one. Okay, so there are those that are cooked up and only exist on TV, and then there are those that exist outside of the TV. Because remember, we're in the time of judgment, and it's not just things. These devils are not just going to push things just to scare you. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where these things are actually going to be taking effect. Okay, but anyway, Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.